Golly goodness, is it November already? I really meant to do something special for Orktober, but it's already November. How am I supposed to celebrate this amazing holiday when it's already over? What would I know? I need some sort of orc specialist to really let me know what is the meaning of the season so that I can have a holly jolly Orktober.
Hello, Dana. It is me, billionaire influencer, Nobel Peace Prize winner, former CEO of Raytheon, and internationally recognized orc enthusiast, Tyler Russo. I'm also founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Save the Squigs Foundation. You may recognize me from TV or from my various war crimes committed against the people of Armageddon.
Tyler from Billion Dollar Clown Farm? How did you get in here?
I appear to those who are true of orc spirit and orc heart in their greatest time of need. Also, you sent me an invite link via Dropbox.com.
You're an orc specialist. What would you suggest that I do to celebrate this amazing holiday even though it's already November?
Workfember is the original pagan holiday before Games Workshop conquered the Anglo-Saxons in the mid-1400s. Workfember, the original Orktober, is free of corporate shilling and the evil talons of codex release cycles to make end-of-year sales goals. Workfember, the true Orktober, is free from sin, free from the cold hands of capital. It is about digging through your neighbor's recycling bin, diving into the dumpster of your local circuit city, dismantling compact computers and rebuilding them into Stompas. It is the reappropriation of trash, the true orc spirit, kit bash festivities, and using Playmobil models as battle wagons, and insisting it is WYSIWYG and tournament legal because GW offers no model and the year is 2003. Also, you're 9 years old and couldn't afford a battle wagon even if there was one. It was a holiday of thriftiness and taking.
Are you saying that if I build some sort of vehicle based on orcs or grots or squigs, I'll understand the true meaning of this most amazing holiday Orktober?
When I was a boy, my parents would make me and my 600 brothers scrap cars for parts into Toys R Us parking lot. We were forced to disassemble them and build great war engines that towered over the suburbs of central Massachusetts. It would rain destruction upon the lesser families. I had severe tetanus for many years, and only through sheer willpower and homeopathic Monster Energy drink-based recipes was I able to free myself and grow to my current size. This is what we must do to honor the true Workfember tradition. We both must birth 600 sons and force them to fight in the Toys R Us parking lot. Or we could also do a kit bash challenge. That would also be acceptable.
But insert pre-recorded dialogue here.
Insert pre-recorded dialogue here.
I wish I knew the true meaning of Orktober so that I could hold it in my heart all the year long.
The true meaning of Orkvember is super glue and toy cars from the dollar store. If these things are in your heart, Orkvember will always be with you.
Wait, really?
Yes, they must be inserted through self-surgery.
I could probably do that.
I use the GW branded self-surgery kit to perform mine. You can find them on their website at gamesworkshop.com.
Can grots be involved too? What about snotlings? What about squigs?
Grot is orc. Squig is orc. Snotling is orc. If orc believe hard enough, all is orc.
So you're telling me if I kit bash some sort of orc vehicle, I'll learn the true meaning of Orktober?
Yes.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Alright, well I'm trusting you with this. I hope you know what you're doing.
Me too. Let us begin.
To build an Orkvember Stompa, the first step is to go to your local Hobby Lobby and find a statue of Santa Claus wearing a cowboy hat. He is the only employee in the entire store who knows where the orc aisle is. After they make you leave for rearranging all the LED letters to say $billion Clown Farm, the next step is to go to Home Depot. Once there, buy $100 worth of PVC piping, but end up only using like $10 worth. Decided to build the main core of the Stomp out of foam because it's relatively light and actually, yeah, that's it. It's just because it's light. Foam's surprisingly expensive. If you want, you could probably use like paper mache and cardboard. I think that would be very cool to experiment with too. I'm a huge fan of like old orc models in general, and for this I wanted to make something that felt like the old armor cast Stompas. And one advantage of using these foam half spheres is they're already kind of a shape that I was going for. If I were to make another one, using like mixing bowls would be a really cool tool. All the old like Warhammer vehicles are really blocky, so like Tupperware would be good. Just like bottles. I have a video where I made an orc skate out of trash if you want to go take a look on using like recycled parts for making orc things, but like they're mostly basic shapes, so I feel like the simpler the better for the foundation. You want easy recognizable basic ass silhouette. That's why people love Star Wars vehicles so much. This image is what I based my Stompa on the most. He's just cool as hell. He's stupid well, he's not cool. He's very stupid looking, but that makes him cool to me. It's a smooth brain world, and I like simple shapes. What can I say? If you feel like your brain is too smart or good for Warhammer, you can use the hot foam cutter just to start going to town on that bad boy, taking out big old chunks in an effort of self-lobotomy. And once the inside of your head resembles roughly the shape of the styrofoam, you can start gluing these pieces together. I initially drew a line across the middle of the styrofoam, but it didn't matter. It was very hard to cut accurately, so I just kind of like kept hacking at it until it was level on top, or level enough for orc standards. And eventually on up with little snowman. I used a layer of Mod Podge both to provide the initial support for attaching the pieces together, but also if you give them a little Mod Podge sponge bath, it will protect the whole model and prevent chipping and big foam chunks from falling out when you inevitably drop a mid-play. Once the Mod Podge is dry, or kind of dry but not actually that dry if you're impatient like me, you can start driving these big stakes through them. They're just like barbecue bamboo skewers. I provide a lot of structural support, and I repeated the exact same process for his little feet. Plastic card is an essential orc scratch built tool. It's really great, and I'm going to use it for most of the foundation along with poster board because it's very bendy and easier to put into place. Initially I wanted to put a lot of effort into planning out the armor panels and carefully measure them out. Look at this poor fool, he doesn't even recognize the futility of the work he's doing. But I quickly gave up on that because it was extremely hard to be accurate and just went ape shit with a glue gun. The roundness makes more sense for orcs too. I think I'm happy I went with this way ultimately. I wanted to give him a belly cannon but not have it look like a giant penis, and I thought one way to get around this would be giving him 3 little dicks instead of 1 big one. And this is where PVC piping starts to come in handy. I dremeled out all the watermarks and very unorky plumbing regulations and branding that was on these. And after I sanded them down, went over them with liquid green stuff to try and even them out a little bit and fill in some of the gaps that were left over. And here's the fruits of our labor awkwardly protruding from his ribcage. I'm pretty proud of his stomp as a whole, but I'm especially proud that I managed to make the belly gut not look like a big old dong. I used super glue to secure the cannons. Mod Podge wasn't going to cut it here, and super glue dries way faster. When that was dry, I rolled out some milliput to create and some extra support, and also to blend in the gap. You can use green stuff or any other kind of epoxy you have to here. PVC piping is so sick. I don't know what people use it for besides building fake guns and Blue Man Group type instruments, but boy is it good for those two things. I'm gonna use the rules for a custom Stompa for this guy, so I made his right eye very, very big to resemble the gaze of Mork, and the left eye is from a paint bottle cap that I've had literally since I was like maybe 12. If you play this game long enough, you just end up with like so much random shit, and it's so good for kit bashing. I mean, I've like moved a lot of my life and thrown away various supplies over the years, but I'm very happy that I have the stuff that I do still. This is officially a pro hoarding channel. I'm taking a stance. No more tiny homes, no more bullshit studio apartments with a single gaming computer, a microwave, and nothing else. No more exotifying prison cell style living. We should all start paying more than we can afford for apartments to hoard all our trash. The vast majority of it being worth less than 1 month's rent. Anyways, here he is with a bunch of bits glued to him. I bought a Mecha Dread last year, and he came with a saw that I ended up using, and I thought it would be cool to make into a little combat weapon. Pro tip, if you're building something with multiple weapon options and don't know which one to use, just glue all of them. I use a sculpting tool to represent battle damage and make scratch marks all over the poster board and the plastic card. The poster board especially is like super soft, so the scratches show up very well. Early on I knew I wanted those big old banners that you always see in old models, because if you're making an old orc thing, what's the point if it doesn't have like a giant fucking obnoxious banner running down the middle? At least one banner. I went with 2 ultimately. And I used jewelry chains as a means to secure them. If you want the chains to stop moving after you glue them down, use some thin super glue to go over them after. You can either like brush it on, or if it's the really thin kind that I'm scared of using, just like let it drip down and then the chain will stiffen and harden in place. Modeled a bunch of basic rivets in my trash terrain tutorial and 3D printed them, and I use the same ones for the Stompa. Here's another little pro tip aside. If you do end up buying $100 of PVC piping and not really using that much of it, if you get a couple of these little guys here, They're the perfect size for soaking the finer parts of your airbrush in cleaning fluid. To add some variety to the texture of the Stompa, I wanted to make a bunch of glyphs out of plastic card to break up the repetitive square pattern. I usually just start hacking away with my hobby knife, but if you wanted to, you could also print out some glyphs and then trace over them with the plastic card underneath the paper that you're copying. I made a good handful of these, but I wanted to leave some room for doing freehand patterns later too, so I tried not to cover every surface. I don't know why orcs like horns. Like, all the glyphs and, like, clan icons often have horns, but no orcs have horns. Unless, yeah, people like horns, and people don't have fucking horns. I guess, yeah, it doesn't matter. Orcs, I like how orc stuff with horns looks, and you should too. So I decided after to give this skull some horns, and the Stompa himself has big old smokestack horns. I got a bunch of different missiles to represent Stompa rockets. I think these are from a Gundam kit, and this rocket you can barely see. I consider to be the crown jewel of the Stompa. It's an out-of-print 4-year-old grot bomb for people who know or care what that is. Look at that big ass tube. Damn, Tyler, watch out. What are you gonna do with that? Oh, you're gonna make a gun. Yeah, what else? I use a small hobby saw to like cut the gun barrel down, and then I used an X-Acto knife to do a little clean sweep and make sure that the ends were tidier. If you feel so inclined, you can also sand them down. Fit the late 80s, early 90s style of the model, I wanted to have some like really old crew members running around on top. It's somehow already the end of November, and I'm still not done, so I didn't put as many on as I wanted to initially, but here they are anyways. So when I first started, I was initially on having him just have 2 big cannons to represent a variety of guns. But then I remember that I actually sculpted like a smash-a-gun that was basically a lift-a-drop last year for a project I never ended up finishing, and it was pretty easy to modify it in order to make into the lift-a-drop for his arm. So I took a saw to his left gun barrel, cut it down to make room for the lift-a-drop, and then 3D printed one. I was a little worried the rivets would look too much like chickenpox at first, but I feel like they really came together in the end. With models this big, it's important to make it seem like they belong at the same scale and the same universe as normal Warhammer guys that are next to them. And having small details like bits and rivets help communicate that a lot. When myself and my friend Ben were 14 years old, the Warhammer 40,000 Apocalypse rule set had just come out for the first time, and our local gaming store decided that it would be a cool idea to host a tournament for a broken system. The rules for the first Stompa they were fucking busted. There was no force organization at the time for Apocalypse. You could just bring whatever your grubby little teenage heart felt like. And what our grubby little hearts felt like was 3 Stompas made from buckets. The Stompas were so big, it was almost impossible to move past them effectively, and anything that did move past wouldn't survive for long. They were also almost impossible to kill. We ended up winning the tournament and went undefeated at the end, but the store owner was so upset that we had used buckets to win his tournament that we were denied any and all prize money or bragging rights or glory of any kind. We used a broken list and a broken system to win a broken tournament. It was the late 2000s and morality had not yet been invented. I do not condone competitive apocalypse tournaments of any kind, but I do condone scratch building grotesque abominations out of recycled goods and long abandoned Fisher-Price toys for tabletop wargaming. There's this guy who was really famous in early 2000s orc forums named Cruza. Or I guess maybe that's not actually that famous, maybe that's just like a few dozen freaks know you, but it meant a lot to me back then. He would scratch build these super elaborate models out of plastic card, and unfortunately it seems like a lot of the material that he would post online has since been taken down. But him, another site called thewog.com, and a site called thefrenchwog.com were full of incredible homemade orc models. I probably would have never gotten into sculpting in any form or believe that I could actually like effectively scratch build something that was cool enough to warrant being used if it weren't for these sites. Kit bashing is alive and well today, believe you me, I know, but even though we're living in a new golden age of 40k, I feel like the ambition to make things out of literal junk and random shit that you find lying around instead of like 5 $200 kits that you bought specifically for the purpose of kit bashing together has gone away a little bit from Warhammer culture. And besides being a reason to collaborate with Dana on a project, I largely wanted to make this video to pay homage to the unsung early forum heroes of the 2000s. And if you build your own large sun out of wood glue that's likely to get you disqualified from any major tournament in the year of our Lord 9th edition 40,000, I would really like to see them. We have a Discord server where you can post pictures. Also, feel free to send them to me on Instagram. just like big boys. So the chipping medium I put underneath, the point is that when you put new paint on top, you'll be able to scratch it off later, and then the coat that you put underneath the first layer of matte varnish that's underneath the chipping medium will show through. It's not an essential step. You could probably skip it if you wanted to, but I think it's nice to add a little bit of variety to the texture of the Stompa that's kind of smooth and flat otherwise. And this model's large enough that if you don't own an airbrush, you could use different colored spray cans for the same effect. I like airbrushing because it gives you a lot more control and is better for doing detail work. But the airbrush of the proletariat, the humble spray can, will do just fine here. You can even dry brush if you wanted to. For most modern looking paint jobs, I don't like it when orc freehands are too detailed, but I think it's kind of funny if there's like one orc or grot who's super good at painting, or at least super good for most orc standards. Just like everyone in older editions of 40k is walking around with these extremely ostentatious banners, just like actual Marines. And I want to try and match that look. I think it's sick as hell. After I was done airbrushing and most of the freehands were in place, I went over the teeth and the armor plates and did a layer of highlighting around them. It just makes them stand out from each other a little bit more. And here's him after using water and an old brush to remove some of the chipping medium and applying some enamels on top. I've been over these a lot in my other videos, and if you want to learn more about them, I would recommend checking out my Trash Town video or the one I did about an orc mecha tried a while ago. Paint the left eye, I base coated it with the green on the right hand side, and I applied the one on the left in increasingly more intense coats to build a grading effect. This is how it looked at the beginning, and I basically just kept going layer by layer until it got super bright. Just like rivets, just like bits, decals are a good tool for establishing scale. They are small, Stompas are big, and they will remind your brain how size works. Surprisingly easy for a brain to forget. I used some very thick watercolor paper to make the banners. First I measured out how far the chains were apart in order to make sure that the banner would look good when it was matched up with them. And then I found some reference images from old white dwarfs and codexes of orc banners and started thinking about ideas. I used an X-Acto knife to cut out a crooked pattern. I just thought it would look more interesting. And then I also made a bunch of like little wear and tear marks inside. I wanted to have the Stompa, who I've named Gub Gub, look like he was built as a collaborative effort between different clans. So I gave him a Bad Moons banner on one side. He's got an Evil Sun's banner on the other. And then he himself is painted in a Blood Axe color scheme. A bunch of different Blood Axe iconography hidden throughout. Damn, I'm so tired, dude. I should have recorded this narration earlier today. Hello, good morning. It's 7 hours later and it's time to finish narration. I want to paint with watercolors an average of like once per year, but this year I guess that's not happening. After giving up on finding the watercolor set you impulse bought in 2016, and I've used exactly 3 times prior to now, just start going to town with some watered down GW paints. I want to make a video entirely dedicated to designing banners in the future, but the basic principles are just to make a pencil sketch first and work lightly in small layers so that you don't accidentally ruin the paper halfway through. Or if you put too much paint on, it'll curl up too, which is no good. And if you don't want to draw your own, GW has a bunch of really good, very old banner templates out there, and I'll include a link to some of the ones I've found in the video description. I wasn't able to get them 100% done in time for our November deadline, a very, very late November deadline now, but he's most of the way there. Here's a couple of the crew members I managed to finish. Eventually I'm going to take them off their bases and glue them on. But as far as finishing touches to the Stompa himself went, just a lot of weathering powder here and there. And as always, be sure to apply a couple thin coats of matte varnish after you're done. This is the most fun I've had working on a model in a while though, and now I want to make like 4 or 5 more, but my apartment barely has room for him to begin with, so I don't know if that'll happen. But there will be more scratch building, for sure, at various scales in the near future. And if you like this video, a like, a comment, or a subscription would mean a lot to me. I also have a Patreon, which will be in the video description below. And if you're here at all, you probably already know about Dana's channel, but just in case you don't somehow for some reason, it's great. She made a video too with a bunch of little goblins riding rockets, and you should go take a look at it. They came out great, and I'm really glad we got to make this together. That's it for now. Happy scratch building, everyone, and a very merry Orkvember to you and your 600 or more sons.